He was hired to protect the lawyer's daughter, not steal her heart. But when they discovered her father staged the attacks, the real danger was just beginning. The gavel's sharp crack echoed like a gunshot in the sudden silence of courtroom 7B. Dominic Moretti, Chicago's most feared defense attorney, nicknamed the Devil's Advocate by both admirers and enemies, didn't flinch. He merely adjusted the cuff of his impeccably tailored Brioni suit, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. Another win snatched from the jaws of justice. Across the aisle, the prosecutor slumped, defeat etched onto his face, but the victory tasted like ash in Dominic's mouth as his gaze flicked towards the gallery's back row. Viktor Dragovic, his current high-profile client, an art dealer with a sideline in illegal arms and a penchant for symbolic brutal violence known as the Sculptor, wasn't celebrating. His cold reptilian eyes were fixed not on Dominic, but on the empty seat beside him. The seat reserved for Dominic's daughter, Sienna, a seat she'd pointedly refused to occupy. As Dragovic was led away in cuffs, conviction for multiple life sentences imminent despite Dominic's best efforts to secure a lesser charge, he paused beside the defense table. He leaned in, his voice a venomous whisper that slithered past Dominic's ear. "A man's greatest treasure, Dominic," he hissed, the scent of expensive cologne and underlying decay clinging to his words, "should be protected with utmost vigilance or sculpted into ruin. A fitting masterpiece, wouldn't you say?" The threat, veiled in artistic metaphor but chillingly clear, hung in the air long after Dragovic was escorted out. Dominic's knuckles whitened on his leather briefcase. His treasure, Sienna. Sunlight streamed into Sienna Moretti's sleek, minimalist apartment, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and highlighting the stark absence of personal warmth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic, impersonal view of Lake Michigan. Sienna, perched on a stool at the marble kitchen island, glared at her constitutional law textbook as if it had personally offended her. At 26, with dark, intelligent eyes and a sharpness to her features softened only by a cascade of chestnut hair currently pulled into a messy ponytail, she radiated restless energy. Her phone buzzed. Her father, again. She silenced it with a flick of her thumb, the familiar knot of resentment tightening in her stomach. "Another win for the forces of darkness?" her best friend Maya asked dryly from the sofa, scrolling through her own tablet. Maya, pragmatic and grounded, was Sienna's anchor to the normal world her father's wealth and infamy constantly pulled her away from. Dragovic, life sentences. Dad pulled some procedural rabbit out of his hat, delayed the inevitable. Sienna replied, her voice tight. The sculptor's not happy, made some ominous noises. Maya frowned. "About you?" "Indirectly. The usual treasure bullshit, just another ploy to control me." Sienna slammed her textbook shut. "He thinks locking me in a tower is protection. It's suffocation." The sharp rap on the apartment door was unexpected. Sienna exchanged a wary glance with Maya before answering. Dominic Moretti stood in the hallway, an immovable mountain of charisma and tailored wool. Beside him stood a man Sienna hadn't noticed at first, which was strange because he was easily over 6 feet tall and built like a fortress. He wore dark, functional clothing that blended into the shadows of the hallway. His face was all hard angles and guarded stillness, his eyes scanning the apartment interior over Sienna's shoulder with unnerving intensity before settling on her with a neutrality that felt like a physical barrier. "Liam Holt." "Sienna?" Dominic's voice was smooth, but an undercurrent of steel ran beneath it. "This is Liam Holt. He'll be ensuring your safety from now on." Sienna's blood ran cold, then hot with fury. "My what? Dad, no! This is insane! Dragovic's threats are courtroom theatrics." "Viktor Dragovic doesn't do theatrics, Sienna. He does violence," Dominic stated, stepping past her into the apartment, Liam following silently, his movements economical, his presence instantly shrinking the spacious room. "Liam comes highly recommended. Ex-Army Ranger. The best. He stays here." "Here?" Sienna choked out, gesturing wildly around her sanctuary. "You expect him to live here?" "The guest suite is adequate," Dominic said, already heading towards it as if the matter was settled. "Liam will accompany you everywhere, classes, the library, even coffee with Maya. Nowhere is outside his purview until Dragovic is securely transferred to a maximum security facility, and this unpleasantness is resolved." Liam remained silent, a statue observing the familial eruption. His gaze, however, missed nothing. The tremor in Sienna's clenched fists, the protective glint in Maya's eye, the absolute control Dominic exerted over the space. "Unpleasantness?" Sienna spat, following her father. "You mean the consequences of defending monsters? This is your world, Dad, not mine. I won't be a prisoner because of your choices." Dominic paused, turning. The charm was gone, replaced by the ruthless pragmatism that won impossible cases. You are my daughter. That makes you part of my world whether you like it or not. Liam ensures you remain part of it. Accept it. He turned to Liam. You have full authority regarding her security protocols. Report any concerns directly to me. With a final, unreadable glance at Sienna, he was gone, leaving the suffocating weight of his decree hanging in the air. Sienna whirled on Liam, fury directed at this new, tangible symbol of her imprisonment. Well, aren't you going to say something? Recite my schedule? Pat me down? Liam met her glare without flinching. His eyes, a startling shade of deep green in his otherwise impassive face, held no judgment, only watchfulness. Ma'am, his voice was low, gravelly, but calm. My primary objective is your safety. I'll endeavor to be unobtrusive. Your routine, once shared, will dictate mine. Unobtrusive? Sienna scoffed. You're a 6'2" shadow, and it's Sienna, not ma'am. This isn't the military. A flicker of something, perhaps amusement, perhaps weariness, passed through Liam's eyes so quickly she might have imagined it. Sienna, he acknowledged. I'll need a walkthrough of the apartment. Security systems, access points. Thus began Sienna's life under guard. Liam Holt was indeed a shadow, silent and persistent. He moved into the guest suite, his presence announced only by the faint scent of gun oil and coffee, and the unnerving way he seemed to materialize whenever she stepped out of her bedroom. He drove her to Northwestern in a nondescript SUV, sitting silently in the front, his eyes constantly scanning mirrors and sidewalks. He sat in the back of her lectures, a brooding, intimidating presence that made her classmates whisper. He was an immovable object to her irresistible force of rebellion. She tested him relentlessly. She tried to lose him in the labyrinthine law library, ducking between towering shelves, only to find him waiting calmly at the exit she'd planned to use. She provoked arguments during drives, criticizing his driving, his silence, his very existence. He countered with quiet competence and infuriatingly logical responses delivered in that low, steady voice. Taking this route avoids predictable choke points, Sienna. Silence allows for better situational awareness. His dry wit surfaced unexpectedly once, after she'd sarcastically asked if he planned to handcuff himself to her in the shower. Protocol doesn't specify shower details, he'd deadpanned, the ghost of a smile touching his lips before vanishing. But I'd recommend a waterproof radio. The first tangible proof of danger came not from Dragovic, but from a paparazzo outside a high-end restaurant where Dominic had insisted on a family dinner, a tense affair filled with veiled barbs about legal ethics. As they exited, a man with a long lens shoved aggressively past the doorman, yelling Sienna's name, his camera flashing like a strobe light in her face. She stumbled back, blinded, a spike of panic lancing through her. Liam moved faster than thought. One moment he was a step behind her, the next he was between her and the photographer, his body a solid wall. A firm, non-violent but unyielding grip on the man's wrist stopped the camera's advance. "Step back," Liam commanded, his voice cutting through the clamor with chilling authority. The photographer, startled by the sheer intensity radiating from Liam, mumbled an apology and retreated. The incident was minor, over in seconds, but the adrenaline surge in Sienna's veins was real. The threat, it seemed, wasn't entirely imaginary. Slowly, begrudgingly, cracks appeared in Sienna's armor, and she glimpsed the man beneath Liam's stoic professionalism. She saw him discreetly help an elderly street vendor pick up spilled fruit near the courthouse, his movements gentle despite his imposing frame. She witnessed his calm, grounding presence when a sudden fire alarm shrieked during a late-night study session in her apartment. While Maya panicked, Liam efficiently guided them out, his instructions clear and reassuring, his hand a steady pressure on Sienna's back until they reached safety. It was a simple gesture, but it anchored her amidst the blaring chaos. One night, the strain of living under threat and her father's suffocating control became too much. Haunted by a nightmare, fragmented images of a terrified witness from one of her father's past cases, a case she believed he'd won by burying exculpatory evidence. She woke gasping, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She stumbled into the dimly lit living room, seeking water, seeking air. Liam was there, standing sentinel by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. He turned instantly, his posture alert but not threatening. He didn't speak, didn't ask intrusive questions. He simply observed her trembling hands, her ragged breaths. Slowly, deliberately, he moved to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and handed it to her. His hand was steady, his gaze holding hers with a quiet understanding that bypassed words. "Breathe, Sienna," he said softly, his voice a low rumble in the quiet apartment. In, out, slow. He guided her through the simple rhythm until the panic receded, leaving her feeling vulnerable but strangely safe. He saw her fear, not as weakness, but as a reality he was there to face with her. The final crack formed after a reckless act of defiance. Chafing against her confinement, Sienna convinced Maya to help her sneak out to a crowded, noisy bar downtown, a place Liam wouldn't expect. For an hour, amidst the thumping bass and anonymity, she felt free. Then a drunk, aggressive man, offended by her polite rejection, cornered her near the restrooms, his breath hot and sour in her face. Fear, cold and sharp, replaced her fleeting freedom. Liam materialized beside her as if conjured. No grand entrance, just sudden, solid presence. He inserted himself between Sienna and the man, his voice dropping to a dangerous register Sienna hadn't heard before. "Walk away, now." The command brooked no argument. The drunk, sensing the lethal intent beneath the calm words, backed down, muttering curses as he disappeared into the crowd. The adrenaline was still singing in Sienna's ears as Liam turned her towards the exit, his hand firm on her elbow. In the relative quiet of the bar's entrance alcove, under the flickering neon sign, she looked down. His knuckles were white where he gripped her arm, and a thick, jagged scar ran across the back of his right hand, disappearing under his sleeve. Without thinking, driven by a surge of gratitude and something deeper, more unsettling, she reached out. Her fingertips brushed the raised, rough skin of the scar. Liam froze. His hand tensed beneath her touch, but he didn't pull away. His gaze snapped to hers, the professional mask slipping for a fraction of a second. In that instant, Sienna saw a flicker of raw vulnerability, a glimpse of the pain and history etched not just on his skin, but beneath the surface. The air crackled with an unexpected tension, a dangerous electric current that had nothing to do with threats from the sculptor, and everything to do with the silent shield standing inches away. She snatched her hand back as if burned, the unspoken boundary between bodyguard and charge suddenly terrifyingly thin. The echo of the drunk's aggression faded, replaced by the deafening silence of a new, uncharted danger, the terrifying pull of forbidden attraction. The cage felt tighter than ever, and the silent shield guarding it had just become infinitely more complicated. The echo of Sienna's touch on Liam's scar vibrated in the silence long after they returned to the sterile luxury of her apartment. The unspoken tension, thick and electric, replaced the suffocating resentment of her confinement. Liam retreated behind an even more impenetrable wall of professionalism, his movements precise, his gaze avoiding hers with a newfound intensity. Sienna, flustered and furious at her own recklessness, both the bar escapade and the impulsive touch, buried herself in torts and contracts, the dry legalese, a poor shield against the memory of raw vulnerability in Liam's eyes. The threats, however, refused to respect the fragile détente. 3 days later, Liam halted Sienna abruptly as they approached her sleek silver Audi in the university parking garage. His posture shifted instantly from watchful to predatory. He crouched by the driver's side front wheel, his fingers tracing an almost invisible wire snaking from the brake line, severed cleanly. The air turned icy. "Don't move," he commanded, his voice devoid of its usual calm gravel, replaced by a lethal sharpness. He swiftly disabled the sabotage, his movements economical and terrifyingly competent. The message was no longer veiled courtroom rhetoric. It was a promise of metal fatigue at high speed, of twisted steel and shattered glass. Dragovic's signature was evolving from whispered threats to tangible violence. Sienna's bravado faltered. Standing beside the compromised car, the concrete walls of the garage suddenly felt like a tomb. "He knows my car," she whispered, the reality of the sculptor's reach chilling her more than the autumn wind whipping through the structure. "He knows routines," Liam corrected, rising, his eyes scanning the shadowed corners, his hand resting near the concealed holster beneath his jacket. "Patterns are vulnerabilities. Yours just changed." His gaze finally met hers, not with accusation over the bar incident, but with a shared understanding of the escalating danger. The silent shield was fully engaged. The tightening of security was immediate and absolute. Liam vetoed the Audi. He drove her everywhere in the anonymous SUV, employing complex, unpredictable routes. Her apartment became a fortress. Liam insisted on upgrading the alarm system himself, adding motion sensors and reinforcing the door to the guest suite, a barrier that felt increasingly symbolic. Their forced proximity became claustrophobic, the air thick with unspoken words and the magnetic pull Sienna fought desperately to ignore. The next gift arrived a week later. A plain brown package left at the concierge desk for Sienna Moretti. Liam intercepted it, his expression grim as he carried it back to the apartment. Using specialized tools from his kit, he opened it with meticulous care on the marble island, away from Sienna but within her sight. Inside, nestled in gray packing foam, lay shards of delicate hand-painted porcelain. It took Sienna a moment, a cold dread seeping into her bones to recognize the pattern. Tiny, stylized butterflies. Her breath hitched. It's the music box," she choked out. The one my mother gave me before she died. The butterfly music box. Dragovic hadn't just sent a broken replica, he'd desecrated a sacred memory. One of the butterfly wings, partially intact, lay atop the shards like a morbid signature. The sculptor was making it deeply, terrifyingly personal. Liam carefully bagged the fragments for potential evidence, his jaw clenched. He didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he methodically swept the apartment again, checked the upgraded sensors, and positioned himself by the windows, a silent, vigilant bulwark against the violation. That night, Sienna didn't sleep. She sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the spot where the package had been. Liam remained standing watch, a dark silhouette against the city lights. The silence wasn't oppressive now, it was a shared vigil against the encroaching darkness. The breaking point came on a crisp afternoon during Professor Hendrix's renowned criminal procedure lecture. Sienna sat near the back of the sun-dappled amphitheater, Liam a silent presence 2 rows behind, and to her right, his gaze constantly sweeping the high windows and the tiered seating. Hendrix was dissecting a landmark Fourth Amendment case when it happened. A sharp crack shattered the academic calm. Not a gavel, but the unmistakable sound of a high-powered rifle. A fraction of a second later, a spiderweb of cracks exploded across the reinforced window pane directly above Sienna's head. Shards of safety glass rained down like lethal confetti. Instinct and training merged. Before Sienna could even register the danger, Liam was on her. He didn't shout, he moved. A powerful arm hooked around her waist, yanking her backward off the bench with brutal force. He twisted mid-motion, his own broad back slamming against the solid lectern beside them as he pulled her down, shielding her entirely with his body. His weight pressed her into the hard floor, his arms caging her, his head tucked low beside hers. The world narrowed to the scent of gun oil and clean cotton, the hard planes of his chest against her back, the frantic drumming of her own heart against his arm, and the chilling silence that followed the echoing gunshot. Students screamed, ducked, scrambled under desks. Hendrix's voice boomed. "Down, everyone down!" Security alarms began to wail. Liam didn't move. He held her pinned, his body a living barricade, his breath warm against her temple, coming fast but controlled. "Don't move," he murmured, his voice a low vibration she felt through her bones. His eyes scanned the chaotic room, the shattered window, assessing angles, potential follow-up shots. Sienna trembled violently, not just from fear, but from the overwhelming reality of his sacrifice, his body willingly placed between her and a sniper's bullet. Minutes stretched like hours until campus security and Liam's own pre-alerted backup swarmed the room, declaring the immediate threat over. The shot had come from a distant rooftop. The shooter was gone. Slowly, cautiously, Liam eased his weight off her, helping her sit up. His hand lingered on her arm, steadying her, his gaze searching her face for injury. Glass dust glittered in his dark hair. She saw the intensity in his eyes, the fierce protectiveness stripped bare, and the residual adrenaline thrumming through him. In that raw, terrifying aftermath, the walls between bodyguard and charge, between duty and desire, crumbled to dust. He hustled her out of the lecture hall, through panicked crowds, into the reinforced back seat of the SUV. He drove not to her apartment, but to a nondescript building downtown, one of Dominic's secure safe houses, a featureless concrete box with biometric locks and a panic room. The silence inside the sterile, windowless space was deafening after the chaos. The air hummed with the residual shock and the terrifying intimacy of near death. Sienna leaned against a cold steel wall, shaking uncontrollably. Liam stood a few feet away, running a hand through his hair, dislodging more glass dust. The professional mask was gone, replaced by a stark, haunted intensity. He'd faced death before, she realized, but this time it was her death he'd intercepted. "I saw the glass." Sienna's voice was a ragged whisper. "Above me, you covered me." The image of him shielding her, his back to the window, flooded her mind. "It's the job," he said roughly, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. He turned away, bracing his arms against the wall, head bowed. The rigid control was fracturing. "It's not just the job." The words burst from Sienna, fueled by terror, gratitude, and the dam of emotion finally breaking. "You could have died." Liam whirled around. The raw fear she'd glimpsed earlier was blazing in his eyes now, mixed with a desperate, unvarnished need. "Yes," he snapped, the word explosive in the confined space. "And I'd do it again. Don't you understand? It stopped being just the job weeks ago." The admission hung between them, charged and undeniable. The space vanished. Sienna didn't think. She moved. She crossed the distance in 2 strides, grabbed the front of his shirt, and pulled his mouth down to hers. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision of fear, relief, adrenaline, and the pent-up longing that had simmered beneath the surface since the night she touched his scar. Heat exploded between them. Liam froze for a heartbeat, a final barrier of professionalism, then surrendered with a groan that vibrated through her. His arms locked around her, crushing her against him, his kiss fierce, demanding, a desperate affirmation of life against the shadow of death. It was chaos and sanctuary, forbidden and utterly inevitable. When they finally broke apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together, the safe room felt utterly transformed. The sterile walls pulsed with the aftermath of their passion. Reality rushed back in, cold and harsh. "This island, impossible," Liam breathed, his voice thick, his hands still gripping her waist as if afraid she'd vanish. "Dangerous," Sienna corrected, her own voice unsteady. "Professionally catastrophic." But the look they shared acknowledged the deeper truth. The line was irrevocably crossed. The tension was no longer just external. The greatest threat now lived within the sanctuary itself, their own treacherous hearts. In the fragile truce that followed the kiss, secrets began to seep through the cracks. Late one night, fueled by shared takeout coffee and the intimacy forged in the safe room, Sienna found herself confessing her deepest shame, the case of Michael Vance. "My father defended a tech CEO accused of corporate espionage and assault," she said, tracing the rim of her mug. "Vance was guilty, I know it. But Dad found something on the key witness, a junior researcher. Something embarrassing, unrelated. He threatened to expose it, destroy her life, unless she recanted her ID testimony." Sienna's voice trembled with disgust. "She vanished after the trial. Dad won. Vance walked. And that researcher? I tried to find her later, through legal aid channels. Nothing, she just disappeared." The weight of her father's moral bankruptcy, the collateral damage she felt complicit in, spilled out in a torrent of whispered anguish. Liam listened in silence, his gaze fixed on her. When she finished, he didn't offer empty comfort. Instead, he shared his own shadow. "Afghanistan," he began, his voice low and rough. "We were ordered to clear a compound. Intel said hostiles only. We breached, and found families, women, kids." He closed his eyes, the memory of physical pain. "I followed orders, we all did, but the intel, it was bad. Deliberately bad? Maybe. 27 civilians died that day. My unit, we were the weapon. I carry them, every day." He opened his eyes, meeting hers with a stark honesty. "I took this job because I thought protecting one person, cleanly, could balance the scales. Atonement." He gave a humorless chuckle. "Nothing's clean." The shared confessions forged a deeper bond, a mutual understanding of guilt and a desperate yearning for redemption that transcended their assigned roles. They found common ground not just in attraction, but in a shared moral compass that pointed firmly away from Dominic Moretti's win-at-all-costs philosophy. Sienna saw the honorable soldier beneath the stoic protector. Liam saw the crusader for justice beneath the rebellious daughter. This newfound alliance shifted Liam's investigation. The ineptitude of the attackers, the clumsy paparazzo, the easily spotted brake sabotage, even the sniper who missed from a prepared position, gnawed at him. It felt staged, too theatrical. He spent late hours hunched over his secure laptop in the guest suite, tracing digital ghosts. Burner phones used to coordinate the paparazzo, and the garage mechanic led to dead ends, and then, subtly, to a network of shell companies. Companies with Byzantine ownership structures that, after painstaking virtual excavation, seemed to whisper a name: Moretti Holdings, a subsidiary of Dominic's vast, opaque financial empire. The revelation hit Liam like a physical blow. He double-checked, triple-checked. The trail was deliberately obscured, but the fingerprints, digitally speaking, pointed towards Sienna's father. He sat back, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating the grim set of his jaw. Was Dominic Moretti orchestrating the threats against his own daughter? Confronting Sienna was agony. He found her in the living room, reviewing case law, the city lights painting her face in stark relief. He laid out his findings, his voice carefully neutral, watching her reaction with dread. Sienna's face went deathly pale as he spoke, denial warred with horrified recognition. She whispered, shaking her head. "He's controlling, paranoid, but this, staging attacks, endangering me? No." But even as she protested, memories flooded back. Dominic's insistence on maximum security before the first incident, his almost eager use of the threats to justify isolating her, the way he'd leveraged her vulnerability in media soundbites during the Dragovic trial, painting a picture of a family under siege. "The jury responds to narrative, Sienna," he'd said coolly. "Sympathy is a powerful tool." The pieces clicked into a horrifying picture. "He's using me," she breathed, the betrayal a knife twisting in her gut. "To win Dragovic's case? To control me? Both?" The man who was supposed to protect her was the architect of her fear. Reluctantly, heartsick but driven by the need for truth, Sienna agreed to help Liam dig deeper. Using her legal research skills and access to public records Liam couldn't easily reach, she helped pierce deeper layers of the corporate veil. They found payment authorizations, encrypted but cracked by Liam's software, signed by Dominic's most trusted, discreet lieutenant. They found communications logs showing Dominic himself ordering the low-level harassment, nothing fatal, just convincing scares, shortly after Dragovic's courtroom threat. The evidence was damning. Dominic Moretti had manufactured the initial crisis to manipulate the trial and tighten his grip on his daughter. The night they compiled the final, irrefutable proof, a digital dossier of her father's treachery, the atmosphere in the apartment was thick with shared betrayal and grim resolve. They sat side by side on the sofa, the glow of the laptop screen the only light, their shoulders almost touching. The forbidden attraction hummed beneath the surface, a dangerous counterpoint to the gravity of their discovery. They never heard the key turn in the penthouse door's override lock. Dominic Moretti stood framed in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, his face a mask of cold, incandescent fury. His sharp eyes took in the scene instantly. His daughter and her bodyguard huddled conspiratorially over a laptop, displaying documents bearing his company's insignia. The intimacy of their posture spoke volumes. "Sienna," his voice cut through the silence like shaved ice. "Mr. Holt, care to explain this touching midnight collaboration?" He stepped inside, closing the door with deliberate finality. The gilded cage door had just slammed shut, and the architect of their peril stood within it, his true face revealed. The unseen enemy had stepped into the light, and he was the man Sienna had once called father. The fallout was poised to detonate. The silence in the penthouse living room wasn't just the absence of sound, it was a vacuum, sucking the air from Sienna's lungs. Dominic Moretti stood just inside the doorway, his impeccably tailored silhouette radiating fury so potent it felt like a physical force. The dim light from the hallway carved harsh lines into his face, transforming the charismatic lawyer into something predatory. His gaze, sharp as a scalpel, dissected the scene. Sienna and Liam, shoulders almost touching on the sofa, the damning evidence glowing on the laptop screen between them. "Sienna," his voice was deceptively soft, the kind of calm that precedes a hurricane. "Mr. Holt, what a cozy tableau. Midnight legal research, or perhaps something less professional." He took a deliberate step forward, the click of his polished Oxfords unnaturally loud. "Explain." Sienna's heart hammered against her ribs. Betrayal warred with a lifetime of conditioned fear. "We know, Dad," she managed, her voice trembling but clear. She gestured to the screen. "We know you orchestrated the threats. The paparazzo, the breaks, the broken music box. It was all you." Dominic didn't flinch. A flicker of something, calculation, perhaps disdain, crossed his features. He moved further into the room, his eyes never leaving them. "No? Or suspect? Evidence is a fickle thing, Sienna, easily misinterpreted, especially by those blinded by inappropriate attachments." His gaze swept over Liam with icy contempt. "Did you think betting my daughter gave you the right to pry into my affairs, Holt? To turn her against me?" Liam rose slowly, positioning himself slightly in front of Sienna. His posture wasn't aggressive, but it was immovable, the soldier resurfacing. "We found proof, Mr. Moretti. Payments, orders, signed authorizations under your subsidiary holdings. You endangered your own daughter to manipulate a jury and control her." Dominic stopped a few feet away. The mask of paternal concern he sometimes wore was gone, stripped away to reveal the ruthless strategist beneath. "Endangered? Don't be melodramatic. Controlled variables, calculated risks, everything was designed to be non-lethal, easily contained, to demonstrate the very real danger Dragovic posed, to ensure the jury saw us as victims, to keep Sienna safe and useful." His voice rose, the veneer cracking to reveal raw, possessive anger. "And you violated the most basic tenet of your profession. You compromised my daughter. You turned her into your accomplice against me." "He showed me the truth." Sienna shot back, standing now, anger overriding fear. "He protected me when you were busy staging the danger. You used Mom's memory, Dad. You shattered that music box for effect." Dominic's control snapped. "I did what was necessary to win," he roared, the sound echoing off the cold glass and marble. "To protect this family's legacy, to protect you from the consequences of your own naivety. Dragovic is a monster, and the only way to beat monsters is to be smarter, more ruthless." He took a ragged breath, the fury subsiding into a chilling, desperate intensity. "But you forced my hand. Your little investigation? Your indiscretion?" He spat the word at Liam. "Dragovic found out. He discovered the ruse." A cold dread washed over Sienna. "What?" "He has eyes everywhere, Sienna, even inside my operations." Dominic's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. He knows I staged the threats. He believes I deliberately sabotaged his defense, setting him up to take the fall while using him as a bogeyman. And now the real monster is awake. He looked genuinely afraid, a sight Sienna had never witnessed. He's coming for you, not as a pawn in my game, but as vengeance against me. He'll make you suffer to break me. Dominic whirled on Liam, his voice dripping with venom. You wanted to protect her, Holt. Protect her from this. You're both on your own. He stormed across the penthouse, wrenched open the door, and slammed it shut behind him with a force that shook the frame. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. Sienna sagged against the counter, the weight of her father's betrayal and the terrifying ultimatum pressing down. Liam was already moving towards the window, peering down at the street below, his posture tense. The silence lasted barely 5 minutes before the shrill ring of the penthouse landline shattered it. Sienna and Liam exchanged a look of dawning dread. Liam nodded, hand hovering near his weapon. Sienna picked up the receiver, her voice trembling slightly. Hello? Sienna Moretti. Viktor Dragovic's smooth, cultured voice, devoid of any warmth, slithered down the line. So predictable, your father. Rage makes men careless. Look at your screen. A video call request flashed on the security panel monitor beside the door. Liam moved swiftly, bringing the feed up. The image that filled the screen wasn't Dominic's opulent office. It was a dim, concrete space, perhaps the inside of a large van or a Stark storage unit. Harsh work lights illuminated the scene. In the center, bound tightly to a metal chair with thick wire, sat Dominic Moretti. His lip was split, one eye swollen shut. Behind him stood Dragovic, impeccably dressed in a dark turtleneck, idly tapping a sharp chisel against his palm. Around them, arranged with grotesque care, were the symbols. Photocopies of legal documents, the shattered pieces of the butterfly music box, and the crude, twisted wire sculpture of the unbalanced scales. He left your sanctuary, Dragovic continued, his cold eyes fixed on the camera lens. We offered alternative transportation. He's proving a reluctant model, but inspiration strikes. He gestured dismissively at Dominic. Our trade remains, his flawed, treacherous life for your blank canvas. The Kronos Gallery, West 12th. You have 85 minutes. Come alone. His gaze intensified. If I sense Holt's shadow near the gallery, if I see so much as a drone he controls, your father becomes an abstract piece, permanently. Come willingly, and perhaps we create something, enduring together. The screen went black, the dial tone buzzing in Sienna's ear. Sienna dropped the receiver, her hand flying to her mouth, staring at the blank screen where her bound father's terrified eyes had just pleaded silently. The reality was inescapable. Dragovic had snatched Dominic moments after he'd walked out, right outside her door. Dragovic's words echoing in her skull. Blank canvas. Sculpture. Images of his known victims, twisted, symbolic tableaus of agony, flooded her mind. The fear was paralyzing. Yet, looking at her father, broken and bound, a lifetime of complicated love warred with the searing betrayal. He was a monster, but he was her monster. The real nightmare had begun, and the clock was ticking. Liam was already moving, grabbing his go-bag stashed near the door. You're not going alone. This isn't a trade. It's a trap designed for you. He wants you terrified and delivered. He wants to make Moretti watch. He turned to Sienna, his eyes burning with fierce resolve. We do this together, or not at all. The impossible choice crystallized. Sacrifice herself for the man who'd manipulated and endangered her, or abandon him to a horrific fate? The answer, born of the bond forged in fire and betrayal, came with startling clarity. Together, she breathed, meeting Liam's gaze. Against both of them. They had 87 minutes. Sienna's mind, honed by years of legal training under pressure, shifted into overdrive. Dragovic's demand, come alone, but he hadn't specified how she arrived. He'll expect a car or a cab, she said rapidly, pacing. He'll be watching the main approaches. What about the old service tunnel? The Kronos Gallery shared utilities with the bakery next door. There was a dispute about access years ago. I researched it for a property law seminar. The tunnel entrance is boarded up, but it might still be accessible from the bakery's basement. Liam nodded, pulling up building schematics on his tablet. Possible, risky, he might have it watched. He switched gears. His instruction, alone. He didn't forbid you being wired. Standard extraction protocol. He pulled a tiny, flesh-colored earpiece and microphone from his bag. I get you close. You go in the front. I infiltrate silently through the tunnel or an alternate point once you're inside, using the chaos of your arrival as cover. He handed her a small, sharpened piece of metal scavenged from a dismantled sculpture kit he kept for lockpicking practice. Hide this, last resort. Aim for soft tissue, eyes, throat. Don't hesitate. While Liam prepped tactical gear and weapons, Sienna sat at her laptop, fingers flying. We need insurance, regardless of what happens. She compiled the digital dossier of Dominic's crimes, the payments, the orders, the communications. With a few clicks, she encrypted it and set timed deliveries to the FBI field office, the state's attorney, and 3 major news outlets set to release in 2 hours. If we don't come back, he doesn't walk away from this. She slammed the laptop shut. Time to go. The derelict Kronos Gallery loomed on West 12th Street, a decaying monument to forgotten art. Boarded-up windows stared blankly onto the deserted street. Graffiti scarred its once elegant facade. Sienna, clad in dark, practical clothing, the wire concealed beneath her collar, felt the tiny earpiece like a lifeline. Liam was a phantom somewhere in the surrounding shadows, his voice a calm, steady presence in her ear. Approach clear. Front door is slightly ajar. Go slow. I'm moving to the service tunnel access point near the bakery alley. 3 minutes. Taking a shuddering breath, Sienna pushed open the heavy, groaning door. The interior was a cavern of gloom, thick with the smell of dust, decay, and something metallic. Paint? Blood? Dim light filtered from somewhere high above, illuminating swirling dust motes. Crates and shrouded shapes littered the space. In the center, under a single, harsh spotlight, sat the recreated scene from the video. The overturned desk, the scattered legal debris, the twisted wire sculpture. And bound to the chair, head lolling, was Dominic. He looked barely conscious. Sienna Moretti. Dragovic's voice echoed from the darkness. Punctual, and alone? How disappointing. He stepped into the circle of light, flanked by 2 hulking enforcers. He still held the chisel. Where is your faithful shadow? Did he abandon you? Or perhaps your father's ultimatum worked? He sounded almost bored. He followed orders. Sienna lied, her voice surprisingly steady. I'm here, let him go. She took a step forward, her eyes scanning the shadows, searching for Liam, for an advantage. Dragovic chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Let him go? After the performance he orchestrated? After the insult? He gestured to the twisted wire sculpture. He tipped the scales. Now we restore balance. With you. He nodded to one of the enforcers. Secure her. As the thug moved towards her, Liam's voice hissed in her ear. Now, Sienna, fire alarm panel, left wall, near the exit sign. Sienna didn't hesitate. She dove sideways, not away from the enforcer, but towards the grimy wall near the front entrance. Her fingers scrabbled over the dusty metal surface, finding the familiar red break glass panel. She slammed her elbow into it. Glass shattered. A split second later, ear-splitting klaxons blared throughout the vast gallery, and blinding strobe lights began flashing erratically. Chaos erupted. The enforcers flinched, momentarily disoriented by the sudden sensory assault. Dragovic snarled, raising a hand to shield his eyes. Find him! Kill him! In the disorienting strobe, Liam materialized like a vengeful ghost. He emerged from behind a stack of crates near the back, not from the service tunnel entrance, but from a hidden access point he'd scouted earlier. He moved with lethal silence and precision. One enforcer went down with a choked gasp, a tactical knife finding its mark before the man could raise his weapon. The second enforcer spun, firing wildly into the flashing gloom. Bullets sparked off metal sculptures. Sienna, down! Liam yelled, tackling her behind a large shrouded marble plinth as bullets ricocheted around them. He returned fire, his shots measured and accurate, forcing the remaining enforcer and Dragovic to take cover behind the overturned desk. The gallery became a deadly ballet of light, shadow, and gunfire. Liam fought strategically, using the disorienting strobes and the maze of abandoned art installations for cover, drawing fire away from Sienna. Sienna, her heart pounding, forced herself to think. She remembered the gallery layout from her research, the location of emergency exits, the heavy fire doors. Liam, the fire doors near the back office, she shouted over the klaxons peering around the plinth. If we can seal Dragovic in this section. On it? Liam laid down covering fire, then moved in a low, fast crouch towards the heavy metal doors Sienna indicated. Dragovic saw the maneuver. He barked an order to his remaining enforcer, then lunged not at Liam but towards Sienna's hiding place, the chisel gleaming in the strobe light. Sienna scrambled back, but Dragovic was faster, fueled by sadistic rage. He kicked aside the plinth, his hands snapping out, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength, yanking her towards him. The stench of his cologne and cold malice washed over her. No more games, little canvas, he hissed, raising the chisel. Time to make my mark. Terror threatened to paralyze her. Then she saw Liam, halfway to the fire doors, turning, seeing her trapped, his face a mask of horror. She saw the twisted wire sculpture nearby, a symbol of her father's corruption and Dragovic's madness. and she felt the sharpened metal fragment Liam had given her, cool against her palm inside her sleeve. As Dragovic pulled back the chisel, aiming for her face, Sienna stopped struggling. She met his cold eyes. "You forgot one thing, Viktor," she said, her voice surprisingly clear. His grip tightened, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "And what is that?" "The artist," Sienna whispered, "is always most vulnerable while creating." With a surge of desperate strength fueled by rage and love, she whipped her hand free and drove the sharpened metal shard upwards with all her force, not at his weapon hand, but towards his eye. Dragovic roared, a sound of pure animal fury and pain. He jerked back, the chisel clattering to the floor, his hands flying to his face where blood welled darkly around the embedded metal. It wasn't a killing blow, but it was blinding, agonizing distraction. It was all Liam needed. Abandoning the fire doors, he covered the distance in 3 strides. He tackled Dragovic with the force of a freight train, driving him to the dusty concrete floor. A brutal, efficient struggle ensued. The enforcer trying to intervene was silenced by a precise shot from Liam's secondary weapon, and within seconds, Liam had Dragovic pinned, disarmed, and secured with zip ties, the sculptor writhing and cursing in guttural Russian. Simultaneously, the front doors of the gallery exploded inwards. Black-clad FBI SWAT officers poured in, weapons trained, flooding the chaotic space with tactical lights. "Fie! Down! Down on the ground!" The klaxons finally cut off, leaving a ringing silence punctuated by harsh commands and Dragovic's pained curses. Liam, breathing heavily, blood seeping from a graze on his temple, and a deeper wound high on his shoulder where a ricochet had caught him, stood over the secured Dragovic. He looked immediately for Sienna. She was already moving towards her father, cutting his bonds with a knife retrieved from a fallen enforcer. Dominic Moretti slumped forward, gasping, his eyes wide with residual terror and disbelief as he looked at his daughter, then at Liam subduing Dragovic, then at the heavily armed agents swarming the gallery. You came," Dominic rasped, his voice raw. Sienna looked down at him, her expression unreadable. "We came for justice, Dad, not just for you." She stepped back as FBI agents moved in to secure Dominic as well, reading him his rights: obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, conspiracy. The man known as the Devil's Advocate was finally facing the music, broken and exposed. Liam reached Sienna's side, ignoring the medics trying to look at his shoulder. His eyes searched hers, a silent question hanging between them. "Are you okay?" Sienna leaned into him, her body trembling with adrenaline and relief, nodding mutely. The silent shield had held. The witness had testified with her heart, her courage, and a sharp piece of metal. Together, against all odds, they had stood, and they had survived. The fallout was swift and public. Viktor Dragovic, apprehended mid-kidnapping and assault, faced additional charges that guaranteed he would never see freedom again. Dominic Moretti's empire crumbled under the weight of the evidence Sienna and Liam had unleashed. Charged with multiple felonies, his reputation in ruins, he awaited trial in a cell not unlike those his former clients occupied. Sienna and Liam, hailed as heroes in some circles and controversial figures in others, gave detailed, damning testimony against both men. Months later, the chill of Chicago's winter was finally giving way to the tentative warmth of early spring. Sunlight streamed through the large windows of a modest, comfortable apartment in a quiet neighborhood far from the gilded cage of the penthouse. Bookshelves overflowed with legal texts and well-worn novels. A simple wooden dining table served as a desk, covered in case files. Sienna Moretti, J.D. now officially appended to her name, sat at the table, frowning thoughtfully at a legal brief for the Justice Project, a non-profit dedicated to representing victims of violent crime and prosecutorial misconduct. Her father's fall had freed her to pursue the path she'd always wanted. The soft click of the front door lock echoed through the apartment. Liam Holt entered, shedding a light jacket. The lines of tension that had once seemed permanently etched around his eyes had softened. He ran his own small security consultancy now, Holt Shield, specializing in ethical protection for vulnerable clients. The habit of vigilance remained. His eyes automatically scanned the room, checked the window locks. But the weight of atonement had lifted, replaced by purpose. He walked over to the table, his shoulder, now fully healed, moving easily. He placed a gentle, calloused hand on Sienna's shoulder, no longer the gesture of a bodyguard containing an asset, but of a partner offering silent support. Sienna leaned back into his touch, covering his hand with hers, a smile touching her lips as she looked up at him. The scars remained, his on his hand, hers deeper within, but the threats were gone. The gilded cage was a memory. In the quiet, sunlit certainty of their shared future, they had finally found their verdict. Not guilty of letting darkness win. They stood together, free.
Enjoyed the story? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next one.